Hi there. So I'm back for more of Favi. You know, we spent the entire morning together today and even into the early afternoon talking about multi-hooping, and we worked for quite a while in our Horizon Link program, just, composing some other combinations of designs that we're going to then use to stitch out a table runner. So what I wanted to do, I showed you several different things this morning in class of different examples of multi-hoop projects that I've done over the years. And after class got over and after I ate my lunch and all of that, I decided that probably I would pull out some more stuff that I have in storage that are multi-hooped projects. I think I tried to impress upon all of you in class today that the importance of really getting a good use out of your and our embroidery machines is to really expand your skills and to start to think about your designs in a different kind of a way, to use them in such a way that we're not just putting a cute little doodad on a t-shirt or on a tea towel or something like that, but that we really are expanding our universe so far as what we can do with our embroidery designs. And so I've got a pile of stuff here that I'm going to walk through with you and just kind of tell you a little bit about how I created these things. And as I'm sitting here starting this video, I'm looking at something that's sitting in front of me on my coffee table that I didn't pull, but I'm going to actually talk about this as my first thing because it is a multi-hoop project and maybe something that you may not have ever thought of before. My house is kind of traditional, a little bit girly. I like heirloom kinds of things and old-fashioned cut work and doilies and crochet and that kind of thing. So this is my style, but anyway, just to kind of show you something that I've made with. So what this thing is here, it's going to be kind of floppy, so it's not going to show up really well, I don't think, as I'm holding it up here. But these are cut work designs. And what I did with these designs is I stitched out several of them. I don't know how many there are here, and I'm not going to stop to count them. I stitched them out on water-soluble stabilizer with this fabric. And after I had several of them, what I did with them is I laid them out on this background fabric. This is I think it's a cotton polyester linen look fabric. And I laid these little motifs all out in a somewhat of an oval shape. And I stuck them down there so that then I could figure out how big my center part of my design was going to be. And these center designs are a little flowery kind of a thing. And I printed up templates and I positioned them also on my fabric. This was before I had any fancy digitizing software or anything. So this was purely done with templates. And anyway, there you have it. I did all the embroidery in the center. And then once that was completed, then I went ahead and I zigzag stitched on the back side here. You're going to be able to see this a little bit, I hope. Zigzag stitched these down and trimmed away the excess fabric in order to get that cut work kind of edge on here. So that's a pretty cool way of using some embroidery designs and maybe doing something different and unique with them. And like I said, I did do that quite a long time ago, and I didn't have any real kind of layout software or anything in order to compose that design. I think that this project here that I'm showing you is probably the very first thing that I ever did with multi-hooping. This project was a design collection that I had bought. I think it was from Amazing Embroidery Designs, or I think that was what the company's name was. And I tell you, back in the day when we used to buy embroidery designs, and I'm talking the early 2000s is when I got my first embroidery machine, it wasn't unusual that when we bought a design collection that it would be somewhere in the $90 to $120 range for a design collection. So this is a really expensive little project that's sitting here because I think I've only used some of the designs from this collection one other time. And anyway, so basically what this set was to imitate wrought iron work. I think that was the name of it, was wrought iron. And the only part of this that's actually embroidery is all of the little curly-Q little motifs everywhere here. Okay, and what I did with them again is I printed out templates. This is something that I was actually able to compose in my Baby Lock sewing machine. We had the ability to make some little designs and stuff in that machine. So these were made in the sewing machine, and then these were embroidered using templates on my fabric. All of the straight lines that are connecting things together in this layout here are parts that I stitched on my sewing machine. So what I did is I just measured real carefully how wide of a satin stitch was digitized into this design, collection, and that's what I used actually to do all of the connecting lines on the sewing machine. And that's how I did that one. Okay, I really like it. I pull that one out now and then and put it somewhere in my house. Another one that's multi-hooped, very obviously, this was a design collection from Anita Good Design, and it was some sort of an heirloom. I don't even remember the name of it. If you're interested in it that much, I could, pull out the CD and I could find it for you. But this is a linen fabric, and you can see that it is a cut work. Oh, I think the design was called Entredo, the Entredo collection, now that I'm looking at that carefully. And that the cut work part of it is all that open work there of the Entredo stitching. And again, it was done with lots of templates that were stuck together in order to get this layout for this table runner, which, as you can see, has never been finished. I probably could put it on the dining table and without having too much criticism, but what my intention was on this project was that I serged around the edges, first of all, to control the raveling once I cut out my unique shape here. Then I actually used one of the M foot on my machine, and with the same thread that I had used for serging, I did a little decorative edge here. So it's sort of lacy looking, and I kind of like it, but I don't know. In the long run, I kind of thought probably what I will do with this is turn this edge under very carefully all around the edge, and I may do some kind of a lace, or maybe I'll even hand crochet a finish on there when I do decide to finish it. All right, this is a multi-hoop project that I entered into the Graceful Embroidery company's annual competition last year, and I won first place for it. The members of the group voted, and this is the winning project. Lots and lots of multi-hooping on this one. I did do the layout for this in my Digitizer MBX program, and as you can see, it's tons of little flowers and so forth that have been all put together to create this design. The inspiration for this layout actually came from a quilt that I found somewhere on the internet, and it was an applique quilt. And it was kind of designed so that if you look carefully at this, you're going to be able to see that these are kind of like rings, circles that interlock with one another. All of the designs that are in this project were free designs that Hazel from Graceful Embroidery had given to the group over the years. And anyway, this is how I put them all together, and it was a lot of hoopings. I'm not going to remember exactly how many. What I can tell you about it without having to sit and physically count them is that each one of these outer parts of the ring was a hooping. This was a hooping. I think that the inner part of the ring was maybe another hooping. I had to do all these little connecting flowers that are in the intersections. Those little purple ones that are in the intersections were all done separately. And of course the corners were done on their own, and each one of the lines of flowers that connect the corners together were additional hoopings. So, couldn't have done it without printing templates and a lot of patience. Anyway, I really like the end result of that one. It's pretty cool. This project here is the next one I'm going to show you, and this one was done in a really unique way. And again, lots and lots of hoopings of my fabric in order to get this to work out the way that I wanted it to. This was a design set that was a tile scene, and it was 3 blocks wide by 3 blocks high, so it was going to be 9 blocks altogether. When it was all said and done, I probably would have saved myself some time by stitching it out just as the 9 blocks instead of with the method that I came up with. But the reason that I did this in the way that I did was because the embroidery designs included this background stitching. You can see them. They're look sort of like rays of sunlight that's filtering through the trees. And so all of these lines would have been broken up with a seam if I had done this as a block by block method. And I didn't want that. I just kind of thought, that's going to interfere, once you start sewing these blocks together. And I wasn't feeling that that was going to be a good choice. So what I did with my fabric is I prepared it beforehand, and I knew that this was going to be a wall hanging. And what I did with it is I backed it with some cutaway stabilizer so that it's fairly stiff. And I marked, taking my cue from what was the digitized embroidery, I marked on my fabric where these bands of stitches were going to be, and I stitched them out on my sewing machine, just using a regular straight stitch and just stitching, stitching, stitching. Then what I did is I hooped my fabric, and I stitched all of the leaves for each one of the 9 blocks. All right, because what I had also done in the meantime was I had marked where these trunks of the trees were going to be at. So I knew where my leaves needed to be, stitched those out in 9 different hoopings. Then what I did is I appliqued down the strips of the fabric using just an applique stitch on my sewing machine. Actually, I think I used a satin stitch on that. If I'm looking at it carefully, yeah, I did. I used a satin stitch on there, and I actually even came back in on these and I embellished them. It may not show up on camera, but I did do some decorative stitching, just kind of like little zigzags back and forth along these batik strips. Then I rehooped my fabric to stitch out each one of the birds in the hoopings that they were originally designed for. So there you have it. So that one was done with lots of rehooping, and I think it actually came out a lot better by doing it this way rather than doing it as a tiling seam. Okay, so it was a lot of work. It's destined to be a gift for somebody in the family. So that's probably the only time you'll ever see it. And this one here are built-in designs from the Janome 12,000 machine. Pretty much the same kind of a thing. What I did with them is I used the Horizon Link software in the layout program. I think that's probably the first time that I think I ever used the layout program in software. And I used these built-in designs. I think one of the things that I had done with them, although I can't be sure because it's been a couple of years since I made this, is I think that I opened up these designs in digitizing software and I pulled things out of them. Like, for example, I don't think that this was an original part of this design collection in the machine. I think what I did with it is I pulled out the flower from this section, and I pulled out the little circle within a circle, and came up with my own little motif that I then later on stitched into the corner of these little designs. And anyway, so that was multi-hooping, working along with digitizing software and probably the Horizon Link Suite software. And then after it was all embroidered, I backed it with batting and backing. And you can see that I did a lot of free motion quilting in here. I was pretty proud of this one. You know, I did some stippling around the designs in the corner. I do these little cathedral windows in this section in here. In the center of the design, I did some little crosshatch quilting. And then I added in a lot of decorative stitches. Not a lot, but some decorative stitches just to kind of add a little bit more interest between the motifs in there. So, okay, there's another idea. This one here was not an actual multi-hooped project, although I did it in, obviously there's different hoopings available here. This Christmas wall hanging that I made several years ago. And the reason why this could have been done as a multi-hoop project, but it was not, because I was using leftover fabric from another project that I had, and I liked the background color for what I wanted to do with this Christmas wall hanging. And so I stitched each one of these blocks individually, and then I sewed them together along the seam lines here. I covered that up with a decorative stitch so that you don't see the seam lines. Then I'm looking at the back side to see what order I did this in. Then I went in and I put the batting and the backing, and I did the quilting, which was just a machine stipple. Did a lot of decorative stitches. Some of that decorative stitching was done through only the front layer, and some of it was done after I had layered everything up, so part of it does hold layers together. And rehooped to do the little stars. I probably just floated that using my magnetic hoop. And of course I had to rehoop again to to embroider in the Prince of Peace sign. So I think this is a really beautiful kind of an Art Deco or Art Nouveau style of embroidery designs. I got these from Embroidery Library, and I gotta kid you not, each one of these little sections here has over 100,000 stitches. So when I actually stitched this out, I made it on my Janome 12,000 machine, which has a stitch limit of 100,000 stitches. And so I actually had to break these designs apart in the MBX digitizing program in order so that I could stitch them out on my 12,000. Had to do each one of them in two, not rehooping the fabric, but breaking the design into two different embroidery files so that the machine could understand them. All right, you always come up with all kinds of surprises when you're doing embroidery, and this is one of the ones that at this point in my life is still a UFO. It may never get finished, but I put a lot of work and time into this one. This is a project from the Jenny Haskins design collection called, I don't know, something about a rhapsody. I don't remember what exactly. And we had to buy this design collection because I taught a class on using some of these designs for at the sewing center. So this is what it looks like big. I'm going to hold it up. And you can see that I've done lots of background quilting. I've done some applique and decorative stitches, lots of embroidery. The reason why it's never finished, and that's why I say sometimes when you're doing embroidery, you get some surprises that you don't necessarily care for. And that is on this one, I don't know what I was thinking, but I used a couple of really funky colors for some of these flowers. And I should have used the same color for all the flowers in each one of the quadrants of this design collection, and I didn't. And because I didn't, I'm not happy about that. You can really see that obvious difference in those two pink flowers there, right? And so it's not done. And maybe one of these days I will finish it, but in order to finish it, what I'll need to do is rip out whatever stitches I don't like, reposition this fabric, and restitch some of those roses. Now, you know, I don't think it's going to be that bad because the stitches are really large, very long stitches, and I don't think it would be that bad to actually rip them out and reposition the fabric and rehoop it. So who knows, maybe this thing will get done someday. We'll see. It's big and it's heavy. Kooky. Here's another unfinished one. This design idea was from the Jenny Haskins Creative Expressions book, but the designs themselves are an Anita Good design. Angie's Roses, I think is what it was called. They stitched out beautifully. So I'll hold it up so hopefully the camera can see this. And again, this is just an unfinished project. I think I have it upside down. Let me turn it around. Maybe not that it makes that much difference, but you know, it's unfinished. It was lots and lots of hoopings. Had some real creative techniques in it. If I hold it up close to the camera, you might be able to see that behind in this medallion center area. That was a cut work effect that we actually cut a window in the fabric and covered it with some organza. And it has a flowery fabric in the back of that to kind of shadow through. It's very beautiful. And the design collection was a really pretty collection. And honestly, I don't know why I haven't finished this. Maybe I'll finish it this summer before the fall sets in. So those are just some of the things that I've worked on over the years. And as you can see, I've spent sometimes a considerable amount of time working on some of these projects that unfortunately haven't been completed yet. One of the things that I have on here actually is still pinned on here, and this was the different thread colors that I had used in this project, because at the time that I put it away, I guess it was obvious that I knew I wasn't going to finish it right at that time. So anyway, it needs some work, and I probably will finish this one because now that I've pulled it out to show it to you, I really do like it. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about some of those ways to do some multi-hooping projects. So there's some of my stuff and a little bit about the processes that I've sometimes gone through in order to get going on a project. So I think that's about all I want to say for now. Thanks for watching, and start thinking about some of your embroidery designs, and maybe even just looking around at your environment, and maybe you've got a print or something on a linen of something in your own home, maybe something on a bedspread, or like today in class when I was pointing out the wall hanging that was sitting behind Kelly. She had that Southwestern rug hanging behind her. And you know that even just looking at that with the perspective of, oh, I could use that same kind of an arrangement using embroidery designs. You know, it doesn't have to be Southwestern designs, but maybe, you know, just thinking about that arrangement. So anyway, lots and lots and lots that we can do with multi-hooping and our embroidery machines. So I hope that you had fun watching some of the stuff that I've done, and I'll be seeing you all again sometime soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.